Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about 9 observations that I did for exceptional children. For my kindergarten observation, I observed Miss Ponder's class at Lone Oak Primary School. One of the first things that I noticed was that she had a student's desk placed right next to hers at the front of the room, and then there was another student placed by himself at the very back of the room. She explained to me that the one that was sitting right next to her desk had a hard time focusing on their work, on getting anything done, and she was distracted easily, so she set her at the front of the room closer to the board. And the other student that was seated at the back of the room, he was very bright, but he had trouble keeping quiet. So the teacher and the mother agreed that it was suitable for him to sit at the back of the room. Another thing that I liked in her class was that they all answered her with yes ma'am. They then worked on some spelling tests while the other children were doing centers, and she pulled me over there and showed me some of the students' handwriting, and she positively bragged about how well all of her students' handwriting was. She adapted very well to her students and handled her class very well. My second observation was for first grade at Lone Oak Primary School. I observed Miss Burrell's class. One of the first things I noticed was that there was a student facing the board at the front of the room, and he was leaning back in his chair, not getting any work done. He fell back in his chair several times and almost hurt his leg, but the teacher didn't notice because she was too busy doing testing with another student at the back of the room. The classroom environment was welcoming in a relaxed way, but it was also very cluttered because it was the end of the school year. And the teacher seemed like she was burnt out from the end of the school year, and the students knew that summer was coming up, but she still tried to keep some structure with her students. I wish that the teacher would have put more effort with her students, even though the school year was ending. For my next observation, I observed second grade at Lone Oak Primary School, and I observed Miss Wagner's class. As I entered the room, I noticed they were watching a video on the smartboard, and she told me that the teachers were trying to get all their paperwork done in time, so that's why the students were watching a video. But I noticed one of the students had her desk placed at the very back of the room, next to the teacher's desk, and I heard her mention, "I don't want to watch this show." So the teacher was allowing her to work with letter stencils and trace them at her desk. I thought that was a good alternative to use. Another thing that I noticed in her classroom was the air was blowing full blast. I noticed that children had their jackets covering their arms and their legs, but the teacher hadn't paid any notice to them because she was too busy getting her paperwork done at her desk. I wish this teacher could have planned something a little more involved with the students, knowing that I was going to come observe her class, instead of having me watch a video, watch the class watch a video of something that didn't pertain to school very well. For my next observation, it was my inclusive observation. I went to Lone Oak Exceptional School in Cabot, and they were having students one at a time type on the computer. They were having them spell their name. They were questioning the students with things that they should already know, like their age, their first and their last name, the high school they attended, and their graduation year. These students always seemed happily towards one another, and they were very friendly. The teachers in this facility seemed to try to stay working on the students' level. They're very supportive, and they talk them through anything. Overall, I really enjoyed observing this group of special needs students. They seem to always have a smile on their face. My next observation falls under my 6th grade observation, and I did this at Lone Oak Exceptional School in Cabot. They were working on building a birdhouse, and they had painted a piece of paper the day before, so it was dry, but I noticed that the teacher was cutting out the paper instead of the students. And then they moved into the classroom next door, and another teacher came in and pulled up a video on the computer about bullying. As the video was pulling up, she asked the students what do you do if you see somebody that's being bullied? And then she asked, what is bullying on the computer? And so she answered for the students, and she said, you tell someone. Well, she was surprised to hear that one of her students actually said cyberbullying. She reinforced her students to not tolerate bullying after the video was done. And then they moved on to the subject of science. They talked about their greenhouse that they had in the back of the facility. And they talked about things they had growing in there. She asked the students what they knew that they had growing in there. I like to see that they transition between classes for different subjects of study because it kept their minds flowing and awake. My next observation fell under 4th grade criteria, and I did it at Pathfinder Autism Academy. The students were playing, they were going over math, so they were playing with money, fake money, coins, and then they moved on to counting numbers, and then they moved on to time, and one young boy had the teacher write a time on a whiteboard, and then he showed it on his individual clock. When the students were finished with their assigned work, the classroom rule was they were allowed to do puzzles, so they really enjoyed that. I noticed one student didn't sit in a normal chair. She had a ball for the bottom of her chair. That way she could bounce throughout the day. The teacher mentioned a stretch break at the end of the class, and the students were excited to do this, and it eventually led to the song of head, shoulders, knees, and toes, and it got them up and moving and their brains working. This teacher handled this group of children very well, and she appeared to have a very strong bond with each of them. My next observation falls under 3rd grade criteria, and I did this at Pathfinder Autism Academy in Jacksonville. They were going over language arts, reading, and writing. There was a speech therapist in the class this time, and she was talking to me about one of her students. He had trouble spelling his words out, so he spelled them out on a talker, and the talker was actually an iPad that had an app where he could click on the words that he would like to say. She would ask him who and where, and he would match pictures on an iPad. If he wasn't paying attention or didn't give the correct answer, she would repeat it again and point at it on the iPad. One student in this class randomly reaches their hand out. One student randomly yells. Another student only communicated through writing. I found it very interesting that all these students had different ways of communicating. I've learned that autism children are so different in their each own individual ways, and they inspired me to watch, to learn, and to grow. My next observation was for 5th grade at Lonoke Exceptional School in Lonoke, and they were in a type of garage, and they call it the workshop. Well, there was buckets on the tables with washers and bolts, and each student had a paper laminated with 50 circles on there, and they had to stack a bolt and a washer on there. And once they got all 50 slots covered, the teacher would check it off, and they would put them in a small baggie, and the teacher would keep track of how many baggies they do each day, and they get paid for how many they collect. The students were very nice. They said, "Hi, Sarah," and they were very welcoming, waving, smiling at me. Mr. Wayne, he was very encouraging to his students. He would say stuff like, way to go, girl, and good job. And he keeps very good track of how much progress his students make each day. My next observation was for Lonoke Exceptional School in Lonoke. As I entered the room, I noticed that we had to peek through the door to open the door, and I noticed that there were clothes everywhere. So the teacher explained to me that they pick up clothes from a thrift store in downtown Lonoke, and they help sort through them and wash them and make sure there's no rips, tears, or stains, and they either send them to what they call the White House, or they keep it for their yard sale, or they send it back to the thrift shop. She explained to me that the White House is a Big Brothers and Sisters program, and they pay them by the pound of clothing. I thought that was really neat. One student approached me with this book of drawings, and they were actually very good. Another student, she showed me her book journal, and she had read 226 books within the last 6 years. I think that these students working with clothes and these activities were very impressive and beneficial to the students as well as giving back to their community.